you're overwhelmed with the sleeping pad options for backpacking and you just want something that's gonna be comfortable, keep you warm, and function as it should, then the Nemo Tensor Insulated may be just the ticket. We're gonna go over everything that's good about it, what's bad about it, and see if it's that Goldilocks pad that you've been looking for. Kicking things off with what's good about the pad, we're gonna talk about weight. I have here the size regular wide pad, and it weighs 540 grams for just the pad, or 615 grams if you include the pad, the stuff sack, and the inflation bag. That's a relatively low weight for a sleeping pad, especially one that's as warm as this one. And that's another benefit of this pad, warmth. It has an R value of 3.5, but I've used it down to -6 degrees Celsius or 20 degrees Fahrenheit on frozen ground and being warm. So it outperforms my expectations for a pad with an R value of 3.5. In order to achieve that warmth, the Nemo Tensor pads use reflective film that's suspended in the middle of the pad, and that reflects the heat that you're producing back up to you and the cold back into the ground. And those reflective film technologies are one of the best ways in order to achieve a really high warmth to weight ratio for a sleeping pad. The next good thing about this pad that I want to talk about is its comfort. Comfort's one of the most important things for a sleeping pad in my opinion. If a pad isn't comfortable, then why even bother bringing it out? And the Nemo Tensor does a couple of interesting things in order to achieve a relatively good comfort level. First of all, it uses a 20 denier polyester material for the outer fabric of the sleeping pad, and that material is very soft to the touch. So that's very nice if you're sleeping naked or if you have a quilt and a lot of your skin is touching the pad. That soft feel is really nice. The other thing that it does is it has a dimpled baffling system. So while it's mostly horizontal baffles, there's little dimples throughout, and I find with sleeping pads that have dimples, it helps take the pressure off of any points of your body that are creating a lot of pressure on the pads. So if you're a side sleeper and you get a lot of pressure on your shoulder and hip, then those dimples are gonna reduce some of that pressure. While we're talking about the material, another benefit is that this pad is not loud at all. Some other sleeping pads out there on the market, they crinkle, they squeak, they're just generally loud pads. But because of the nice soft polyester material, it doesn't squeak on the tent floor and it isn't crinkly because the film that it uses for insulation is suspended and it isn't touching each other. So you don't get that crinkly sound that you get with some other sleeping pads. Rounding out the good things about this pad, I want to talk about the features because this pad does have some really nice features. The valve system that we have here is a two-way valve, so you take off this top flap and then that allows you to inflate the pad either through your breath or through this inflation bag. So Nemo makes a really good inflation bag that you attach this nozzle onto there, you blow into the narrow end from about a foot away, and then using the Bernoulli effect, it sucks air into the bag and then you can push that air into the pad. There's two benefits with using the bag over your breath. First of all, you're not getting warm, moisture-filled air into the pad, so it's gonna deflate less over the course of the night as that air inside the pad cools off. Then the second benefit is that you're only using one breath to get a lot of air into the bag that you then push in. So you're using a lot less breath. Instead of 20 to 30 breaths, if you're just breathing straight into the pad, you're only having to fill this bag up with about 6 breaths. A couple more benefits with this valve. If you have the flap open and you just press on this little button here, that releases a little bit of air, and then that allows you to fine tune how much pressure and air there is inside the pad. And then once you want to deflate the pad and pack up for the day, you just rip open this other valve here, and it dumps the air really well. Having a valve that dumps the air out of the pad so easily makes packing this pad up one of the easiest out of any other pad on the market. Moving on to some bad things about this pad. First up is durability. The 20 denier polyester material that it's made out of isn't the most durable. I've heard of a lot of people actually having problems with it ripping or tearing or puncturing easily, especially some issues around the valve system as you're trying to open and close that. People have had some tearing, and I've also heard of some issues with people having this pad dead on arrival with leaks in it already before they even use it. For me, I've had this pad for over 2 years now, and I haven't had any issues with well over a few dozen nights on it. But I also take care of my gear very well. If you're a little bit rougher on your gear, then the Nemo Tensor may be a tough option for you. The nice thing about Nemo equipment is that all of their gear has a lifetime warranty. So if you do encounter an issue, then you can send it back to them and they'll give you a replacement. The second bad thing that I want to talk about is comfort. While this is one of the more comfortable pads in the market, I have experienced my arm falling asleep while sleeping on my side. It only happens when the pad is fully inflated and very firm, and that's because it still has horizontal baffles. While the dimples do alleviate some of that pressure, if you have the pad fully inflated, which you need to do in order to achieve the full 3.5 R value and all the warmth this pad has to offer, then you may have your arm falling asleep, and that's something that I've experienced and I want to share with you guys. A couple more bad things about this pad that have to do with the valve. Even though this valve has a lot of benefits, a couple issues that I've encountered are that it's really hard to get back into the hole if you have it dumping air, and I think that's why some people have had problems with ripping the pad as they're trying to get that valve back in. The other issue that I've encountered is that the connector from the inflation bag sits in the valve very tightly. So when you go to remove that bag after inflating the pad, sometimes it'll rip out the inner valve as well, and then you'll dump all your air, which is very frustrating. The other thing that may keep people from picking up this pad is the price. It's $160 US for the size regular Nemo Tensor Insulated, which is getting pretty expensive. Get this sleeping pad if you don't know what to prioritize. You just want a good, well-rounded sleeping pad that's gonna perform for you well out in the backcountry. It's not the lightest, it's not the most comfortable, it's not the least expensive, but it does everything pretty well, and you're gonna be happy with the Nemo Tensor Insulated. If you wanna see how this pad stacks up against two of the other most popular pads in the market, the Etherlite XT and the Thermarest X-Lite, then go check out a video that I'll post right up in the corner there where I compare all three pads.